Hello everyone. So in today's lesson, I'm going to be talking about practicing regularly in IELTS true false not given questions. So what happens when you practice regularly? Okay. So let's talk about practice regularly. This is one of the trickiest question types. So practice helps sharpen your skills. What does it mean? Example, when you practice regularly, it's going to help you to sharpen your skills, right? So example, you can build skills through repetition, right? So in this particular lesson, I'm going to be talking about uh, building skills through repetition. Okay, what kind of skills you can build through repetition? Right. So now let's talk about the skills that you must have when it comes to IELTS true false not given question, right? So in IELTS true false not given questions, you have to be able to spotting synonyms and paraphrases. Remember, first I'm going to talk about synonyms. Synonyms are similar words, right? So you can't expect the exact wordings in the passage, right? Or you can't expect the exact wordings in the passage as in the statements, right? So for example, if you see a word which is fast in the statement, then you can find a similar word in the passage like quick, right? So spotting synonyms and paraphrases is important, right? So what does it mean, paraphrases? Paraphrases mean saying the same thing using a different words, means different similar words and different sentence structure, right? So you need to be able to identify synonyms and paraphrases when you are looking for keywords in the passage, right? So that is number one skill that you must have when it comes to true false not given questions, right? So that is the first one, right? Now look at the second one, noticing qualifiers. Okay, so for example, always, only, most. So all these are some examples for qualifiers. So you have to be able to notice these qualifiers because qualifiers can change the sentence meaning, right? They can change the sentence meaning. They can change the the information in the passage, right? So you have to be able to identify qualifiers, right, to decide whether the statements are true, false, no, or not given, right? So qualifiers are important because if you are missing qualifiers, then you risk yourself choosing the wrong answer, right? That is the second thing. Okay. And then what about the third one? Third one, distinguishing between false and not given. Many students confusing false with not given, right? So you have to be able to, or you need to be able to identify the difference between false and not given. So that is one of the important skill that you're going to be improving by practicing regularly. So this is one of the important skill, right? So distinguishing means identifying the difference between false and not given. And the next thing is ignoring outside knowledge. So you can't depend on your historical knowledge or scientific knowledge. You can't depend on the things that you know, that you already know, right? So you need to be rely on you need to be relying on the passage, right? So you have to ignore your outside knowledge when it comes to deciding the statements whether they are true or false or not given, right? So don't depend on outside knowledge when it comes to give your answers or decide your answer in true false not given questions, right? So these skills don't come naturally. So how you can get all of these skills? You can get all of the skills by practicing regularly, right? With consistent practice. So you can sharpen your skills only with consistent practice. So just look at all the skills that you have to do, that you have to practice, that you have to just look at all of these things like spotting synonyms and paraphrases, and noticing qualifiers, identifying the difference between false and not given, and ignoring outside knowledge. These are the skills that you must have to decide the correct answer in true false not given questions. So let's talk about why practice matters. Because each time you practice, you can train your brain to scan for keywords faster. Yeah, right. You can train your brain to scan for keywords very quickly. And you have to scan for keywords, right? So first you have to underline the keywords in the statements, and then you will have to scan the keywords in the passage. But when it comes to scanning for keywords, you have to train your brain to scan the keywords, or scan for keywords very quickly. So that is one of the important thing when it comes to practicing regularly, right? So check meaning carefully instead of rushing. Many students, they decide quickly, they rush, and they decide the answer very quickly, ignoring the meaning, right? So you can't do that. So if you're ignoring the meaning, then you risk choosing the wrong answer, right? So check the meaning. So you can't depend on the exact words only. For example, if you are just okay, you can if just because you can find the exact words or similar words in the passage and the statements, you are not be able to decide the answer very quickly, ignoring the meaning. So don't ignore the meaning. Just check the meaning, whether even when you have found the exact wordings, right? Even when you have found the similar words or synonyms or paraphrasing, you have to check meaning carefully instead of rushing. And then third one, spot distractors. Already I said qualifiers. Qualifiers can change the sentence meaning completely. So you need to be able to spotting distractors while deciding the answers for true false not given questions, right? And then fourth one, you need to ignore the outside knowledge. So resist outside knowledge and stick to the passage. So you have to stick to what's written in the passage rather than depending on your outside knowledge, right? So don't depend on your outside knowledge, depend on or rely on this passage. So you are given a passage, you will be given a passage, you have to stick to the passage and answer the question. But don't depend on the outside knowledge. You have to resist, you have to ignore the outside knowledge when it comes to deciding the answers for true false not given questions. And at last, let's talk about the key lesson, what we learned in this particular video, right? So in this video, I was talking about, practicing regularly, and what skills that you can build when you're practicing regularly in true false not given questions. So regular practice build builds automatic habits that save time and prevent mistakes, right? So if you want to, build skills, something like, automatically, you can quickly, very quickly finding the keywords, scanning for keywords, and noticing the distractors and finding the correct answer. If you want to build some sort of skills like this, by preventing the mistakes, You have to follow a regular practice. Consistent practice can build these skills. This is what we learned in this lesson. And the next thing that we learned